I found joy in that very simple moment, being with my daughter, just being in nature. I think in the world that we live in, again, with that breakneck speed, it can be hard to take that time to step back and find those opportunities. And I think it fulfills us in ways that we may not even fully understand. But, I try to embrace that.
This is Intentionally Ever After. Join intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek for a series of personal conversations and coaching sessions with various people about how living with intention shows up for them.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Intentionally Ever After. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by my friend, Mr. C.R. McLeod. C.R., welcome.
Thanks, Joe. Great to be with you.
Yeah, C.R., will you kindly introduce yourself to folks?
So I am C.R. McLeod, as you mentioned. I'm a lifelong Delawarean, and I am a communications professional. I've spent my majority of my career working in communications roles for public, private, and nonprofit organizations, and have a large family. My wife and I have 5 children, and we live in Wilmington. And, they're really the centerpiece of our lives. And, I take a lot of joy in my family and the work that I get to do each and every day.
Yeah, so you're a communications professional, professionally and personally. It sounds like you got to be pretty good at communication with that many people in your household.
Yes, especially as the kids are getting older, and my oldest is 12 now, and helping her, and again, starting to navigate relationships and all of those things. Communications is key.
Yeah, so perhaps the topics of these communications is developing over time as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in your very intentional life, what does it mean to live intentionally?
Well, for me, it's really knowing what my priorities are and focusing on those priorities. And again, I think that it changes over time. If I think about 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I think my priorities are different even from then. We have a finite number of hours each day, and really being aware of what am I committing myself to, and being mindful of that. And at this stage of my life, living intentionally is being focused on my family. Our kids are small. My oldest is 12. My youngest is 3. I have 3 girls and 2 boys. And we're very fortunate. They are just happy, healthy kids, and just have a wonder and joy for life. And, we really can't ask for more than that. And being present in their daily lives is what I consider to be living intentionally at this stage of my life. And I think my wife and I both make the commitment and effort to do that. We had 5 kids. I'm one of 4. My wife is an only child. And, she always, I think, has talked about how she regrets that she never has had a sibling. And when we first got together, I think we both wanted to have multiple children. I don't know, 5 was the magic number, but
5 is multiple. You hit it.
So
congratulations, you were successful.
We consider ourselves to be very, very blessed to have 5 kids. And again, that they are healthy and just growing and thriving. And, we didn't have 5 kids to be pawning them off to other people. So we're doing other things. And, we have this family unit, and we're also very much aware that they're ours for a short period of time. And my wife likes to use the saying, the days are long, but the years are short. And I'm getting that sense already with my oldest turning 12, and she's in 7th grade and 2 years away from high school. And then things I sense will really start to pick up. And when you become a parent, I think you hear from other parents and parents with older children that saying, don't blink, it goes by so fast. And at the time, you're sleep deprived and you're just trying to get through the day and things like that. You're like, okay, sure. Yeah. And then as your kids start to get older, it definitely becomes something that you really come to terms with and become aware of. So at this stage of my life, living intentionally is, again, in a broader sense, knowing what I'm committing my time to. There's a lot of things I'm interested in. There's a lot of things I would love to do, but knowing what the top priorities are at this point in my life. And really that's being there for my kids, understanding the responsibility I have as a parent to nurture my kids, to support them as they grow, and just to also take joy in the time spent with them. And one of the things I try to do, even yesterday was a Sunday, finding time, again, with 5 kids, you really have to be thoughtful about it, but trying to find time where I'm connecting with each of them individually. My 7-year-old Georgia and I, we went out and we rode our bikes down to a creek near our neighborhood and took a walk by the creek. And I had said this to my wife last night, that while we're walking along the creek, she reached out and grabbed my hand and wanted to hold my hand. And that just filled me with such just love and joy in that moment. And that she was happy being there with me. And, those are the things that you can't put a price on. It's those priceless moments, and just making those opportunities. And again, it may only be for an hour. Some days it's 5 or 10 minutes when we have a lot going on, but finding opportunities to connect with each of my kids is really something critical for me. And I put a lot of value on that also. My dad died in his early 40s from cancer. And I was 19 at the time. And, it was one of the things that I've been mindful of. My parents also divorced when I was very young. So I'm also just very mindful that you can't take things for granted. And, I want my kids to have good memories of me and experiences with me that they'll have with them their whole lives. So I know that I've said a lot, but again, when I'm thinking about living intentionally today, that's really what is at the forefront of my focus and attention.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, you have said a lot, but I love how you have taken things from the fortune cookie, be present with my family. I can't tell you how many times I hear that as far as a value that people have. But I'll tell you, it's far fewer the number of people who tell me specifically how they actually live it. And what you're telling me is you find time, but what I'm hearing is you make time. You're very insistent upon the time you make with each individual child, I'm sure, as well as the group. How do you do that from a very logistical level? Because you have to be very disciplined. You've referenced some things that you would love to do, but your current priority at this phase is being present in your children's daily lives on a logistics level only, from a project management perspective. How do you do that? How do you insist upon that? What are some takeaways?
Well, one of them is I've had to learn how to say no. And I'm someone that likes to say yes. I like to help people. I like to learn new things. I like to be active and do activities and do things, and being realistic about what I can do. With those finite hours we have each day, and getting the sleep I need, fulfilling my professional responsibilities, and then taking that remaining chunk of time and thinking about how I'm committing to that time. It can definitely be a struggle because there are times when you can feel torn about what you're wanting to invest in doing. And
for example,
I think, for example, just being involved in nonprofits, larger charitable efforts. I have a lot of admiration for folks who find time and make time to give back and be involved in their community, whether it's their church, a nonprofit that is close to their hearts. I've really had to retreat from that. I did a lot of that leading up to becoming a parent. We were involved with a local animal shelter. I was involved with the National Multiple Sclerosis Society, which my dad suffered from. Being involved in a number of activities that I could find fulfilling, and have pulled back because I realized I want the majority of my time to be focused on being a good husband and father when I'm, again, not sleeping and not at work. So that's been logistically one of the hardest things for me, is saying I really wish I could, but I'm making the choice right now not to. And I think the second part of it is just being aware of our kids. And one of the things that my wife and I think we do a really good job of is paying attention to their state of being. Are they seeming more emotional lately? Are they, is there something that might be bothering them? Are they struggling with friends? And one of us will, she and I will talk about that, how the kids are doing. And if we are noticing some out of the ordinary behavior, for example, we'll make time. Okay, hey, why don't you make an effort to take one of them out and have some one-on-one time with them? And ideally, it'd be something where we could both do it. Logistically, it's not something we're at a place yet where we can say, okay, we're just going, we'll see you other four later. We're going to take one out. And we do try to make those opportunities either through, having help watching kids and making those opportunities, because we know that's something in a bigger family, it's hard to do. In a smaller family, I think it's more normal. Hey, both my parents are here, but again, it comes down to communication and paying attention to the needs and reading really those unwritten messages you're getting from them. So, I think we do a good job of that and carving out opportunities and times to engage one-on-one. So it's not easy. I wouldn't say I've got a written formula that makes it all work that for she and I, but we just seem to know. I don't know if it's that parental insight, that intuition that we all have, but we just seem to know when something might be a little off, and making those efforts to spend extra time and talk with them. And again, siblings can be tough on each other, so disconnecting them from the sibling environment. And really, it seems like a lot, at least to this point. Again, and being a parent for 12 years, it's proven to be helpful in helping to help the kids, give them space to talk about feelings or situations that they may be experiencing and may not feel like they can really open up about in a more group environment, which can be loud and chaotic sometimes at our house.
Yeah. I can understand that. Well, it sounds like you're insisting upon this value of making sure that each individual gets noticed, not even necessarily for what they're doing, but maybe what they're going through and they don't even notice. I could see how it'd be very easy to get caught up in the logistics and schedule of day to day to not focus on that, to not have it on your radar. Yet it sounds like you and your wife, it's very important to continue to check in on that, on the development of each of your children.
It is. And one of the things we also, again, having a big family, teaching our kids that they're lucky. They've got 4 people that we hope will always be there for them and be their cheerleaders for life. And one of our family values is that we show up for each other. As our kids are now getting older, they're involved in a lot of different activities. And it's not just sports. It can be academic activities or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts activities. When they have something that's important to them, that we all show up, and we pride ourselves on being this big support group, being there to celebrate them in their moments that are important to them. So, we hope that's something that will carry over for them as they live their life. And we know we all have challenges, and as you get older, and there's going to be things that happen that again, they may not want to come to mom and dad about, but we want them to have those connections with each other, that they can rely on one another. And we're hoping that we're creating that fabric in their lives as they get older, that they can count on each other and know that each of them is, if they're not in close proximity to one another, at least they know that they're a phone call away.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you're living that way. You're modeling it as well, so they get it that way, as well as the messages that I'm sure that you're sharing, that you're articulating. I'm curious about boundaries, right? About saying no. And you kind of said, you're making sure you get your minimum adequate sleep, or trying to, and then you have your professional responsibilities. And then from then on out, though, you're filling it the rest with family priorities. how do you create that boundary or insist upon that boundary? How did you get clear between work and family? Because that's something that a lot of people are struggling with, especially now with COVID.
Absolutely. And, even during the onset of the pandemic, I've been going to work. I've been physically going to work outside the home. And that's something that's just the nature of my job and what it requires. And again, what we've seen, though, I think in speaking with, a lot of people, there seems to be this blending now of, if you're working at home, we've lost this sharp point of departure between the workday and home life. And I think there's some pros and cons. I think some folks are enjoying the ability to work at home and work and intermingle home duties or things at home that they didn't previously do. For myself, I think I need that separation. I need to be, when I'm at home, I really try to be focused on home. And that's not, even if I'm home by myself, I need to be focused. I will find myself, I need to, as you can imagine, we do a lot of laundry. Should I be doing the laundry? Should I be straightening up? We have things like that. We have a dog, we have a cat. There's always something to do at home. And I know myself well enough where I can work at home and I can be productive for short periods of time. But that constant, if I didn't have an office to go to, it would be more difficult for me, I think, to be as focused as I need to be on the work that I need to get done. So, for one of the things that I am very fortunate for in my current job is the value that is placed on our families. And I think there's this real commitment in where I work to taking care of your home life, make sure, ensures that you're going to be able to focus on and do your best in your professional life. So I don't have guilt when I feel like I put on my calendar that, my daughter has a cross-country meet at 3:00. That's a priority for me. And I feel like I can go do that. And I can make sure that I adjust my schedule accordingly to take care of what I need to take care of. And it's not just about, well, you're expected to be, here 8 to 5 and reachable, at a moment's notice between 8 and 5. I think one of the benefits that technology has afforded us is that we can connect easily. And, for example, I may go to my daughter's cross-country meet early in an afternoon. And then when my son has ice hockey practice in the evening for an hour and a half, sure, I like to chat and engage with other parents, but I'll bring my laptop and I'll use that time, that hour that I missed earlier in the day, to either get back to emails that I may not have gotten back to, work on a project. So, for me, it's that's really, I'm really thinking about, okay, I have the ability to do what I need to do for my personal life and be there for my kids when I need to be, and also have that flexibility to work around that schedule. So I consider myself very fortunate to have that ability.
Yeah. Now, how about boundaries within the home? You have a lot of people, right? And they might want to do different things at the exact same time. And so how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's a challenge. It's definitely a challenge. And, we really try to keep our kids on a schedule also, especially, we stress the importance of rest. And I think as a society, I think we constantly are hearing about how we're a under-rested, and, we don't take that time to unplug. And I think we're really at least I'm noticing it as the pandemic has gone on and restrictions have lifted, and we've returned to a fairly normal life. I don't want to downplay that the situation isn't still here, but we're all really living our life with these new normals, the masking and taking precautions. But I feel like there's this push to, okay, we had this length of time where we unplugged, we really became insular and disconnected, and we weren't really doing anything outside the home. And now there's this push that I feel is easy to get caught up in, where we've got to either make up for lost time and we've got to fill every moment, and we've got to just pack ourselves schedule ourselves so we're just going from one thing to the next. And I'm trying to be very mindful about that sometimes it's okay just to have uncommitted time, to just take a impromptu bike ride, or have a last night after dinner. Again, it's getting darker earlier, but for about 20 minutes, my 5-year-old and I were just threw the baseball in the backyard. That was not planned, but it was just, hey, there's nothing we have to do right at this moment. And he asked me, and it turned out to be something that I think we both enjoyed taking the time to do. So it's really a delicate balance, I think, of, okay, especially, again, the kids, I think kids often have this fear of missing out. The kids always want to be involved in something, and that's great. We try to afford our kids the opportunity to do that, but also saying sometimes, you know what, we're not going out. We've got things we can do. We can play with the dog. We can take the dog for a walk. We can play a game. There's things we can do that are just less structured and less regimented, I guess is the word I'm looking for. And, I think that's something where, but also with technology, and that's something else that we're just really aware of is, you can be in front of a TV or a screen from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, if you allowed yourself, or if we allowed the kids to do that. And we really try to not let that be the case. We try to, let's just find opportunities to be in the moment. And sometimes that means carving out places in our schedule where we just say no. Yeah, we're not going to, go to a friend's house. We're not going to do this right now. We're just going to be home together. And that's something that I think again, from my wife and I's perspective, we know that's not always going to be the case. We've got, again, this finite amount of time where the kids are under our roof, and
right. They're not driving yet.
We want that, right? We want that to, again, we want that home life environment to be a positive and fulfilling one, and not just this breakneck speed, I think, that we can get caught up in.
Yeah, that makes sense. What do you do to recharge solo?
Well, for me, a couple of things. I've really committed myself to exercise over the past several years. I think I've always been active, but again, I try to use exercise now also to set an example for my kids. I know my family doesn't have the greatest health history, and I try to do my part to control what I can. And I also find that I'm just, I feel better after I've run. I've become an avid runner over the past couple of years. And again, I'm not running marathons, but going out for a 35-minute run, running a 5K just around the neighborhood, or going to a place, a park or something like that, helps me recharge. It helps me disconnect and really be in the moment. And I find that I feel better once I've done that. I also like to read, and that can be difficult with a large family and a lot of varying responsibilities. But I really love to learn, and I love reading, and just especially history, and reading about people that I'm interested in or have interesting life experiences. And to me, it's another way where I'm unplugging and I'm disconnecting. And I have two phones. In the world of transportation, there's always something that can be going on, and I can get calls at random times, the middle of the night, weekends. That's just the nature of my job, and I but I relish those opportunities where I can find time to really just, again, be in the moment, do something that I take joy in, and reading, exercise. Those two are the primary examples that come to mind for how I best support myself.
Yeah. So I'm starting to put all these responses into a mental calendar here, and I'm failing to see where you're making the time or finding the time to read. Is this the ideal, or is this what you're making time to do?
So I am a huge advocate of our public libraries. Mm-hmm. In Delaware, we have fantastic public libraries, and we have one close to our home. And I will go in and I will take out 3 books at one time. and I want to read them all. I've even tried to, like, I'll start reading 2 books at once. I'll read 10 pages and I'll pick up a lot of times it'll be something, one will be a piece on a historic figure or an event, and then others is fiction. I enjoy suspense and things like that. And again, in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have plenty of time to read these. The reality is it's not the case. And it can be challenging to find that time. And sometimes it can almost be a source of frustration where I feel like I haven't read and I just want to sit down for a half hour and read. And again, not a website, and I still enjoy the feel of a book in my hands. And while I have a Kindle app on my phone, and it's a great way to have reading material in your pocket. It's easy to, I think, when you're on that phone and get, a text message comes in, a news alert, a sports alert, all these demands for your attention. Mm-hmm. And I don't really feel like I'm engaging with what I'm reading. And I also don't feel like I'm getting that disconnection that I think I'm seeking.
Right.
So being able to have a book in my hands, carving even for 10 minutes sometimes. Some mornings, if my family leaves early and I'm the only one at home, I'll read while I'm having my breakfast. I find that more fulfilling than having on the news or something like that. And I really try to, that helps, I think, put me in a more positive mindset.
Yeah. And I like how you called out that maybe it's only 10 minutes, but you still receive benefit from that 10 minutes.
Yeah. I used to be a morning news guy, and I found it, I think, just making me feel bad. They're just, I think all of us, especially in the world, there seems to be so many problems, and you start internalizing that, and how do you make this better? And I know I can't make it better by myself, but I have these struggles with the things you're hearing and seeing, and mm-hmm. really, that what the impacts are. And again, it's important, I think, for us to understand things that are happening, but I think we need to limit it. And I think there's just this 24-hour news cycle where everything's a crisis. And I just don't feel like that's good for our well-being. And I think, we've got to moderate more what we're consuming. That's at least my take on it. At least for myself, I need to moderate it to preserve my well-being and mindset.
Right. Self-preservation, it sounds like.
Definitely.
What is one change in habit that for you has had an exponential payoff?
Something that I've said no to is being unhappy professionally. And I've had a lot of great experiences and some that weren't great experiences. And while there were positive takeaways after those experiences, I try to learn something from every experience. But realizing that you don't have to stay in that situation, and realizing that I need to be doing something where I feel like I'm contributing to a greater good. And when I've had those opportunities in the past, I've gone into maybe thinking it was going to be a different experience than it was, and just again realizing that sometimes it just doesn't work out. It may not be through the fault of myself or the organization. It may not just be the right fit, and being okay with saying this didn't work out and it's time to do something else, and not being afraid of that. One of the things that I've tried to challenge myself on is, again, I don't like change. I think I'm someone that I like things, I get used to things, and I'm comfortable. And I think that could even be the case for something that may be not so good. And realizing, having that awareness to say, I don't really enjoy what I'm doing, or I'm not feeling, when you have that, if you're dreading going to work, and it's not just a couple of day thing, or you're having a rough stretch, or but it's just sort of a chronic thing, then mm-hmm. to me, that's a larger sign. Like, okay, maybe this isn't what you are the best fit for you, or what wanting to be doing anymore, and really taking action and not just letting things happen to you and say, well, this is where I am and I guess this is what it's going to be. Taking control and saying, okay, this is not for whatever reason, I'm just not happy doing what I'm doing, and really spending the time to figure out what it is that is making me, causing me that feeling. And if it's not something that can be corrected, or, if either through conversations with peers and superiors, thinking about, okay, well, what do I think would be a fulfilling role for me? And as I've gotten older, I think I've become more aware and better at doing that, and been able to say, you know what, I've given it this amount of time, and I just don't think this is going to be the right fit for me, and I'm going to look for that next opportunity. And that's scary, especially it was one thing when I was responsible for myself at a younger age of college.
Right.
I think you have more freedom to do that. As you get older and you have a mortgage and you've got
responsibilities,
children, and all these responsibilities, I think we're all mindful. We have to pay the bills, and we've got to support our families and take care of ourselves. I think it can lead you to a place where I can't make a change because of that.
Sure.
I've tried to turn that narrative around and say, if I'm feeling happy and fulfilled professionally, I think it leads to me feeling better personally. And, again, it's not just about the salary, but it's about the work that I'm doing.
Right.
And again, the salary is important, and we have to think about those things.
It's a parameter, sure.
But to me, I think I've been able to say, you know what, I'm going to do something different, and then taking the steps to do that. So that's one thing that I think I've said no to, and I hope in the future that I will do. Again, I'm very grateful now for where I am and being in my current role for almost 5 years. I love what I do, but again, if something changes in the future, I think having that awareness and saying it's okay to change, it's okay to do something different. I don't think we were meant to do the same exact thing for the entirety of our lives.
Yeah, sure. Well, that's a shift from previous generations, I think, right? It sounds like you're less willing to deal with mediocrity as well. And you flip the script to saying, you know what, I have that much more incentive to do what makes sense for me. Because I have these additional, we'll call them responsibilities, but little ones who are paying attention to everything that I'm doing, to paying attention to the way I'm living my life. No pressure, right?
Right.
It's like all the more reason to live a life of fulfillment, so that I can have the energy that and be fueled and fulfilled in the way I want to be, so that I'm better off for them, but also so they can see that, yeah, you kind of have what you want.
And again, we don't always get the chance to, when you work for someone else, when you work for an organization, it may not be under your control how long you get to work somewhere, but
right.
One of the things I do in my current role is I really try to, constantly be learning. I try to keep myself engaged and learning, and I work in a large organization, and I try to connect with a lot of people to keep me fresh and energized at what I do and doing my job to the best of my ability. And I think that ultimately that brings fulfillment for me. So again, speaking of this living intentionally, to me, that's another way that I'm living intentionally. I don't like just sitting in front of a computer all day. I like to be out and interacting with people, whether it's the community, whether it's coworkers. I really take a lot of I take a lot of joy in that. So that's something that is important to me, and I find fulfilling.
I don't want to assume that I know the answer to this next question, but I'm going to ask it. What area in your life feels just about perfect?
Well, I'm very fortunate to have the family I have, and it can be chaotic, it can be exhausting, and it's not always easy. We all have hard days, and as parents, for those of us who are parents, I think we have hard days. But when I really think about what, is most important in my life, I can't imagine not having these 5 kids now and a partner who is just a fantastic mother and just as a role model for me as a parent, frankly. So, we were very fortunate, even with all of the unknowns last year. We were fortunate to move. We were in a much smaller house. It was the first house my wife and I had purchased right before we got married. So having a little bit more room, it was something that helped alleviate some stress in our house. More bathrooms. So, for example, especially with growing children. So I really I'm happy when I get home, and I just feel it's where I want to be. And to me, that says it all. That feels perfect. It's the place where I get to be with my kids and my wife and my animals, and I don't take that for granted. Unfortunately, it's not something that's guaranteed, and I don't take it for granted. The family that I have around me, even expanding upon that, I've got wonderful parents. My mom and my stepfather, who has been my father figure in my life, since I was 9 years old. And I'm very fortunate to have him in my life as well. My parents are very much involved in our life and a part of our kids' life. And I really can consider myself fortunate to have that, that keeps me centered and focused on, again, what's most important to me.
You've mentioned a couple people just now, but who is someone you admire and what do you admire about them?
Well, definitely my wife is at the top of the list. And I know that's probably an easy one for anyone that's asked that question.
Well, you're going to have to back it up. That's the harder part.
To say their spouse. And I admire her not just for the physical act of being pregnant 5 times and delivering 5 children. That in itself is a miraculous and powerful act to witness and be a part of and see her strength in doing that, but just her commitment to her family. And I don't know if I fully grasped that when we were considering a life together and talking about what we both wanted, and her sense of what she didn't, her father wasn't in her life. And again, she was an only child, and what she wanted out of life. And she lives that every day. She gives fully of herself to her kids, and through her profession, she's a teacher, and she teaches at just an unbelievable independent school that we are just so blessed that our kids get to go there. And they get to go there, frankly, because of her, she works there. And just even being at back to school night a couple weeks ago, and I'm like, I'm so grateful that my kids have the opportunity to be in this wonderful school. Again, I wish every kid could have this experience that my kids get to have, and my kids get to have this experience because of the choice that she has made to be there. So, she's just always very mindful and thoughtful about her role as a mom. And again, she's my parenting role model. I look to her for her strength and guidance as we navigate this journey of raising children. So, she's at the top of the list of, people I admire, because just for that reason, I just always in awe of what she is, willing to do. She'll get up at any hour. The time she puts into, she doesn't, we started this conversation earlier before we started recording, talking about birthdays, and the time she'll put into just, again, it's not about gifts, but the feeling and the sentiment. She wants to bake a cake. She doesn't, it's easy. And there's nothing wrong with a store-bought cake. But she likes to make a cake, and she likes to make sure that the kids have a sentimental gift. And again, that with 5 kids, that is no small task. So, she's someone that I admire every day, frankly.
Excellent. That's awesome. And obviously you'll be having her listen to this later on.
That's right. For sure. So
at least this portion of it, right?
Yeah, no. And again, she doesn't do it for record. She does it because she wants to do it. She doesn't do it because she wants to post it on social media and say, look at me, I'm a great mom. She does it because she loves her kids and wants her kids to have these memories and experiences that will hopefully bring them joy and comfort throughout their lives.
What do you imagine some people admire about you?
This is one when I was prepping for this and thinking about it. I think it can be a challenge to be introspective and step outside yourself and I like to think of myself. I like to think I'm pretty humble. I don't actively seek out attention but one of the things I like to think, and I hopefully would want to be recognized, is I really enjoy engaging with people, and not just people I'm familiar with, but people I encounter on a daily basis. It could be in the store. It could be out on a work site. It could be anywhere. I really take a lot of, I play, it's almost a game I have with myself. I like to remember names. It's just something I've always been aware of, and just being able to make that connection or remember interesting tidbits about people. And I don't always get it right. I don't bat 1,000, but I think that, when you are able to recall something about a person, even, their name or just a tidbit of a conversation you've previously had with them, I like bringing, helping, people. I think people feel good about that. And I think it demonstrates that I care, that I'm not just having frivolous conversations about the weather and traffic. I try to connect with people, and even in a small way. And that's something I don't know if it gets noticed, but I'll hear it from my family. My wife considers herself more of an introvert and will be out places. And again, I've lived here my entire life, and that's obviously a benefit. Living in a small state like Delaware, there's counties in other states that are as big as this state. So I have a unique experience where I'm still surrounded by a lot of people that I may have known 20 or more years ago, and will run into them and can have conversations. And to me, that brings me joy. I like that sense of community. I like that I feel like I have a lot of different connections with a diverse group of people. It's not just a very homogenous, I'm in this bubble. I like that I'm able to connect with people of all walks of life. And, to me, that's really connects on, we're all human beings. We all have different, in this divisive world that we seem to live in, where you're either right or you're wrong. And there's just so much focus on what you don't agree on. Just being able to connect with someone on whether it's about just something at a much simpler level, I find refreshing, frankly, and able to just set aside all of these things that we're so focused on, and finding out what somebody's passionate about and hearing them talk about that, or finding out there's a shared or common interest. To me, that's something I really enjoy. And, I hope that it's appreciated, that people sense that I make an effort to connect. So that would be one that I would think that maybe folks admire that about me, that I try to take time to connect with people.
Speaking for myself, I would say that you are very successful at making that known. I've always considered you very engaging and authentic too, not just engaging, about the weather, but yeah, it's and I would, by the way, I would give you plenty of grace if you did not remember my name, given just the number of people in your household alone. But just knowing your job as well is how many people you engage with on a regular basis. I would think it's reasonable that you might forget, who a person is, let alone their name, right?
Yeah, and I almost, I ran into there was a town hall meeting about a month or so ago that I was at, and a woman came up to me, was engaging with me, and she said, "Oh, we've met before," and I just started profusely apologizing. We had met on Zoom, and I'm so sorry. She said, don't apologize. And but again, I take pride in that. It's just something that I like to connect with people, and I try to cram as much in as I can and retain as much as I can. not always successful, but we're all living our lives, and I think there's a lot we can learn from one another, and I try to pick up what I can from people I meet.
It's a great takeaway. Yeah. Well, in the interest of cramming a lot in the short time we have with one another, is there anything else you want to revisit from our conversation, or something you'd like to share?
Really, one of the things that thank you very much for this opportunity. It's refreshing to talk about things that are important to us. And again, to cut through sort of the superficial things and have a chance to talk about, what our core values are. I think, living intentionally, I would equate to that, living intentionally, and what are your core values? And having this opportunity reinforces that for me and helps me do a check of, am I living intentionally? And I think these are my core values, and this is how I want to, am I doing that? And thankfully, I feel like I am checking the boxes. Is there things I can always do better? Sure. Overall, I really feel like it's great to have an outlet. I've had a chance to listen to other folks that you've interviewed, and I've found that really enlightening to, again, hear their stories. And while I haven't met them, I'm like, I would enjoy meeting that person and having a conversation about that. And, I think you do a great job of providing a space to have authentic conversation and talk about things that are real. I think we're lacking a lot of that. So having that chance to reflect on those things is really important. And I think we all can do more of that. And I think there's such this demand now for our attention. It's awesome. I would never say I don't want a smartphone, because
sure,
having that powerful tool in your hand is great for so many reasons. But there's also a downside to that. And that's one I'm mindful of raising children. I didn't have a phone until I was in college, so I wasn't a child with a smartphone and a tablet and all of these things. And, I know there's benefits, and I'm not being critical of those who put them in kids' hands at a very young age, but, I like to find opportunities to unplug. And I think that's something I've hit upon in our conversation. Just, even again, yesterday, I go back to that moment of being in the woods with my daughter and her grabbing my hand, and you can hear the creek, you hear the water going over the stones, and just acorns falling from the trees and hitting the ground. And she and I stopped for a minute. I said, when the below, you would just hear this cascade of acorns hitting the ground and bouncing off of stones, and taking that in. And I found joy in that very simple moment, being with my daughter, just being in nature. I think, in the world that we live in, again, with that breakneck speed, it can be hard to take that time to step back and find those opportunities. And I think it fulfills us in ways that we may not even fully understand. But, I try to embrace that. So I would love to do more of it. But when it happens, it's something that, I really take to heart.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you offering up your personal reflection time and sharing some moments of authenticity. And I'm glad this recalibration has been successful for you, that you feel like, you're not too shabby. You're doing a pretty good job. And if nothing else, it's an opportunity to ask yourself, did I return those library books?
That's right. I've got a whole shelf full, and, a trip to the library is in order. A return trip. My problem is I'll wander into the stacks and come out with a whole new list. And sometimes just having them is a comfort, knowing that they're there and I can pick it up and read a couple of pages at my leisure. It's nice to have that luxury.
Yeah. Well, I truly appreciate you taking the time and the careful consideration of the questions that I've asked, and I look forward to our next conversation.
Thanks so much, Joe. Great to be with you. And I really enjoyed the opportunity to be part of your podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
This has been Intentionally Ever After, hosted by intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek. If you would like to have your own intentional conversation with Joe on or off the air, visit intentionallyeverafter.com. Thanks for listening.